Second pattern is called the Icy Manipulator, if you've got that one on your sheet. The Icy Manipulator is a little bit bigger. It's in the fly box that's being passed around. It's the pearl streamer with the silver bead. Once again, a simple tie. For this one, I'm using 210 white Danville. The Icy Manipulator works extremely well for bass. In fact, I've fished it all summer for smallmouth, largemouth. It also is super effective for trout, especially in big water, fast water, where you need some weight, you need some visibility. A lot of people at first have said, whoa, that flashy, really? And from my experience, I've caught tons of fish on very flashy flies, but bigger water situations. The hook that I'm going to use for this one is a Mustad 3906B. It's a 3X heavy hook. It's not light wire, it's not 1X, it's not 2X, it's 3X heavy. And it's 2X long, 2X long, 3X heavy. That's the one I want. The silver bead that I'm using, I think, is a 4.8 millimeter or 3/16. Come on. In fact, the fly works so good, I'll often fish 2 of them at a time. Put them about that far apart, 3 feet. Don't put them real close together. Put them far enough apart that there's some independence in the 2 flies, and they can actually catch different currents in the river and swim a little bit differently. If you add the third Icy Manipulator, I call that setup the flash mob, and I'll fish it in really big areas of the river and fish in 3 streamers at a time, about 3 feet apart. It's the longest streamer setup you ever seen. Hits the water pretty hard, all of a sudden there's excitement, there's boils, and all of a sudden fish start coming for them. Okay, so we got a short shank hook on this one. We're going to start our thread and immediately go into some lead wire. This is 035. You don't need a whole lot. Usually 4 or 5 inches is probably too much. And I'll lay that. Lay that in, and I wrap the lead wire back, not all the way to the bend. I want to leave room to tie in a little bit of material there. Leave my thread at the back, and then just wrap that lead wire up. Leave a little bit of a gap behind the bead so that you can finish off the fly with some material and a whip finish. I usually will tie down the tip of the lead wire. The other end is already tied down. We already secured that. Just tie down that. The whole idea behind this one is to represent a bait fish. It's a simple and quick bait fish pattern. So the other material that I mentioned, I showed you guys the blue dubbing, which works on its own to catch fish. This one is another material that I prefer. I don't know if you can see it there. It's a pearl fiber, pretty thick, thicker than ice dubbing. It also has a nice quality that it's straight and rippled. At the fly shop, it's called crinkles on. But it has different properties. When it's out by itself, it looks mostly pearl. But when it's packed together, you can start to see the pink hues that come through it. The other color that I like to use is this one. I've caught a lot of big bass and big trout on this one. It's more of the lavender. And then this one has a bluish yellow hue. But the pearl crinkle is the best by far. Okay. So to start this bug, we're going to tie in a tail select just a pinch of the fibers here, and I'm going to do some clump dubbing all the way up this fly. So I'm going to go about halfway up my material, tie that in at the rear in that gap that's following the lead, and it'll fill in a little bit of that space and create a little better taper. So I just tie it in there. Then I'm going to take and fold this back and wrap right onto it. Okay. Then I'm going to take another clump. And you don't necessarily need a big clump, but what you do want to make sure that you do when you apply this stuff, clump dub style, is wrap it around the hook. So I'm not just going to set it all on top and tie it down. What I want are those fibers to be loose enough that they will spread out and do a 360 around the hook. I tie them in, take the thread back just a hair, and then I'm going to take that whole clump and push it back. Advance my thread. If you build too much material on the rear end of this fly, it'll look a little bit funky. It won't be as dense either. So go sparse. What you want to do is make sure the lead is covered so that you can't see that, but you want to just go sparse with the material. And I'm going to continue clump dubbing towards the bead, push it back. Tie that down, keep going up. Another clump. A big key for me in fly tying is fly density. I like things to be as dense as they can possibly be, a lot of times without a lot of resistance in your sink rate. Idaho rivers typically are swift. You need to get stuff down quickly. You're trying to get those flies down as fast as you can. It's fast water, there's boulder situations. So density is huge. The other thing I like to do, and I'll show you in the salmon fly pattern, is I like to match the weight of the realistic bugs, especially salmon flies. So the last clump that I'm going to do on this guy is a little bit bigger. I've got my thread right up on the bead. Same technique. Tie it in, make sure it wraps all the way around. Push those fibers back. You can build up a little bit of thread there and it'll naturally push those back as well. And you can recycle this stuff. You end up with a little bit on the table. That's my tail for my next bug. So you're not using a lot of the material. You're not wasting a lot of it. And then a whip finish.
Dave, what type of water are you fishing a small and largemouth bass for?
The American Falls area below the dam has a prolific smallmouth bass population. Timing is important there. We'll talk about that. But the further you go down the Snake, you've got smallmouth all the way down until you hit the Columbia. They also occupy the lower Salmon River. A lot of the reservoirs in southeast Idaho do not have smallmouth, they have largemouth. So if you're going to reservoirs...
Do you do a lot of grass or weeds in those areas?
No. No. Even the American Falls area, it grows some weeds, and I'm not dredging in those too bad. The South Fork almost never gets weeded up, and this is one of my faves for there as well. So wait, this fly is finished. The only thing I'll do, I'll pop it out and sometimes give it a, that it's going to fish well that way, but this is a really cool material. Once it's packed that way, you can actually come in and shape it. If you want to go smaller, go smaller. That's about the size I'm fishing right there. So just a little bug. It tracks well in the water. Very visible, very easy to see for the fish. I mean, it just shows up in almost all situations, even dirty water. I'll fish two at a time. I do a clouser with dumbbell eyes similar to this with the same materials. If you like clousers and some dumbbell eyes, you can do that. Any questions on the Icy? It slays the bass. I'll fish 2 of these at a time about this far apart, and a lot of times it's not uncommon to hook 2 bass at once.